Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well today. I must say, I've been posting onto YouTube, putting some comments up, letting you know basically some of the stuff I've been hearing about. So let's begin with the Edinburgh attack. The one where I think it was a gangster or something, but a man was basically found, or a severed head was found in the middle of Edinburgh. Now it turns out one person has actually put out a video. Working Class Patriot has also linked this video, and I'll be linking that in the description below. But he would used to work with coroners and what have you, and he has basically ruled out the possibility that it was a bus attack, or that it was a freak accident, as it were. Now, why is this sinister? Well, to be fair, are we really surprised anymore? I mean, we all know that the mainstream media and Keir The Traitor Starmer will bend over backwards to protect Muslims. That is without any question of a doubt. So why have they called this a bus attack? Bearing in mind that in the video, this ex-coroner has basically come out and said they looked at the torso, and I mean, let's face it, let's take a look at this car, for example. Random car. That thing will weigh a metric shit ton. Don't expect me to go world's strongest man on you and try and lift that shit up, because that ain't happening. But those things aren't exactly light, are they? They're not exactly something that I could roll over my arm and my arm will be absolutely fine. And a bus, I don't think I need to say, is even bigger and even heavier. Like, we're talking hundreds of kilograms, if not tons, as in 1 or 2 tons. Like, obviously not hundreds of tons, because that would be excessive, and there'd be a new bus route down to the core of the earth. Anyway, these things are very bloody heavy, and surely if one of these things rolled anybody over, I know I'm a big guy, but even my torso, even both of me, would be flattened by that shit. But it would sure as hell be a good way of losing some of these pounds, wouldn't it? Though I think the problem is, I'd rather continue living in this world, no matter how deplorable it may be, because I want to do shit with my life. But there was shown to be no depression on the chest cavity, on the stomach, anything. The only thing that was shown was a fairly clean cut across the neck, which is akin to having a blade run across it, whether it be a sword, whether it be a machete, whether it be a knife, or whatever other bladed instrument that Islam likes to get their hands on. And while I accept that they haven't put Islam out as the people who are doing it, and I probably should be using alleged or allegedly it's Islam, the cold bitter truth is, if we've learned anything from Southport, I think a lot of us would stand to reason that some of us are going to immediately suspect it's the so-called religion of peace. I mean, does Lee Rigby need any introduction? I'm sure he would be able to protest that it was Islam that did this, if he was still around. Or what about David Amos? God rest his soul. The conservative politician, Brexiteer, who was murdered by a Somalian Muslim. So yeah, please forgive us, Keir The Traitor Starmer, if we don't immediately believe the horse shit that you're trying to peddle. Please forgive us if we do not automatically decide, well, it can't be Islam, can it? After they have a track record of this shit. And as we all know, 90% of the terror suspects on the watch list right now, they're Muslims. 84% of grooming gang cases committed by Muslim men. And as of 2024, from what I've read up, and I've actually looked this up earlier today, the Muslim population makes up, I believe it was 5.84%, give or take a couple of point percentages here. But 5.84% of our population is Muslim. Could you imagine that number if it was even 20% higher? It bloody scares me, quite frankly. But of course, the mainstream media won't tell you this. You know the drill, folks, because say it with me, it doesn't suit the narrative. The media and Keir the Traitor Starmer would rather tell you, oh, it's all the far right, and that we must fill this black hole of money, and that we should not jump to conclusions, even though Keir the Traitor Starmer has been caught with his pants down in the Southport scandal. But the fact that somebody's coming out and saying that this person in Edinburgh was not run over, he was beheaded, by saying basically there was a cut across his neck, any notion that this was done by some random person, that this was done by somebody who isn't a follower of Islam, if they try to immediately dismiss it, I'd believe the polar opposite if I were you. Though I leave your thinking to you. Don't let me influence what you think. But it astounds me that the media are so quick to change the narrative of this. Like, if they're being shown indubitably that this man has had his neck cut, bare minimum, what's the media going to say next? That the person was mostly peaceful, and that they're going to bring up a fucking picture of his childhood to paint them as a choir boy or something, like they did Axel Radukabana? I mean, at this point, I rule nothing out, quite frankly. Now, I've spoken enough about that. Let's get on to my next subject. And this, ironically, is directly in line with that little bastard Axel Radukabana. The Southport Memorial. Turns out that the council has removed everything to do with that Southport Memorial, and those three beautiful girls, God rest their souls, who had their lives unjustly robbed from their families. The council has removed all of the tributes and everything. If you look at the place where this memorial took place, all there is left is this pink rose attached to a post, a fake flower. So, what do I make of this? Bearing in mind, the council have said that they have plans to put up a permanent memorial there. I think this is absolutely disgusting. I think it is completely reprehensible. Do you think they'd do that if it was 3 Muslim girls killed? Of course they wouldn't. Because Muslims would descend on the street and riot, just like that. But because it's 3 white girls, let's get rid of all the poppies, the flowers, the tributes to all the families and the people who are affected on this horrendous day. They have no right to fuck around with that shit. The way I look at it, taking away that memorial for those families who had suffered, for the children who'd suffered, for the people who have been traumatized, it is the ultimate act of disrespect. Oh, I also want to point this out if I can. See those poppies there? Remember that for later. Anyway, back on point. The fact that this memorial's now gone is disgusting. As I said, I cannot stress it enough. Completely abhorrent. Is this really what our councils think of our kids? They don't give a shit that 3 white girls lost their lives? That they don't give a shit that families were traumatized by the events of what happened in Southport? Are they really that insensitive? They need to remove all the tributes? If it were down to me, I'd have each one of these dickheads lined up in front of the Southport people. And I would tell the Southport people, these people don't care about your kids. And we'll see how the crowd takes that news. If I were up there and to say, they took away the tributes to your children that you lost. What do you think of these people? I guarantee you all hell would break loose. Just like that. Because they do not like it when you fuck with people's children. They certainly don't like it when you disrespect dead children. Nobody would like that. I don't think even some of our most hardened criminals would like that. And as for them saying, oh, we're going to have a permanent memorial made. Do you hear that? Emptiness. Why do I say this? Because that's what it feels like. Their words, hollow, dead, without meaning, without weight. I think what they're doing is they're saying they'll put a permanent memorial up. Oh, and that's my bus. And they will conveniently forget about this shit in the hopes that, oh, it's not in service. Oh, never mind. I guess I'm waiting a bit longer. Anyway, they're hoping that people will conveniently forget those 3 beautiful girls who were sadly and unjustly killed by an Islamic terrorist. I suspect they'll do everything they can to remove all this. And I cannot stress enough, if we were to flip the script and it was a white person that went out and killed 3 beautiful Muslim girls, and people tried to mess with that memorial, as I said, there would be riots in the streets of Southport by loads of Muslim people, just like that. They would not stand for this shit. And the government would probably cave into them. The councils would cave into them. The police would run away from the Islamic scumbags. But because it's 3 white girls, who gives a fuck? We're just going to take away all the tributes. We're going to make your little day of, oh, you lost 3 young girls. We're going to make it mean nothing. Fuck you, Southport Council. Fuck you. From the bottom of my heart. How dare you treat their lives as if they're insignificant? How dare you? The absolute audacity. I dare to say it's even worse than that of Keir The Traitor Starmer. At least he hasn't gone out of his way to say, you know what, we should have that memorial removed. That's one of the very few times I can actually give some small, slight niche of credit, if you will. I know it's not the right word, but at least you can say Keir The Traitor Starmer isn't that fucking heartless. I hope the people of Southport realise what's going on here and they decide to engage in peaceful protest, please note my words, and they hold the council to account. That does not mean they go out and riot. That does not mean they flip up cars and vans. It does not mean they go around looting Greggs. It does not mean they go out and attack people. But I would implore them to showcase their anger towards the Southport Council that wants to do away with this tribute. What is it a lot of the leftoids like to come out with? Oh, think of the children. Don't you want to see the children safe and sound? Ah, yes, Stephen Nolan, the little dickhead as far as, the migrant crisis is concerned, or in this case, illegal immigrant crisis. Because what this is, the bottom line, is Southport Council are sticking a middle finger up at all the families who have lost their children and the people who have suffered during that horrendous day in Southport. And I think that the council should be held completely accountable for this. Now, you remember those poppies I showed you earlier? What if I were to tell you that the Palestine lot have desecrated our poppy to make their own little poppies for Palestine? I don't think Palestine understands how much of a disrespectful that act is towards all of our war dead. The people who fought in 2 world wars, and some of them made the ultimate sacrifice to give us freedom. 2 wars that saw millions of people dead. Millions. And more injured. And Palestine now wants to make poppies for their dead. Basically, they want to glorify the sacrifice of terrorists. I'm going to repeat that just so that sinks in. Palestine, who actively support Hezbollah and Hamas, two prescribed terrorist groups. Sorry, I had to stop there for a moment. Somebody recognises me from work, which is not a good sign. Anyway, these two groups that are prescribed terrorist groups, the Hamas, stroke number one, Hezbollah and Hamas, that Palestine support, they want to glorify them with a poppy. They want to honour their dead, the dead terrorists who bring nothing but decay and death and suffering. The people that think it's perfectly okay to chant, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," basically calling for the death of all Jews, which is something, of course, the mainstream media will not want to tell you about. I wonder why, folks. I wonder fucking why. I personally do not want to see this poppy. In fact, I think it would be a service if all of these abominations, the poppies for Palestine, were all thrown into a bucket and set on fire. Because at the end of the day, all it is glorifying terrorists. And you know what? If people want to support poppies for Palestine, you're basically endorsing terrorism. That's the bottom line and the cold, bitter truth. Any support for terrorism must be cast out of our society. 100%. I do not want to see poppies for Palestine. I want these people respecting our cultures and our society and our beliefs, rather than try to support the beliefs of terrorist groups who belong in their third world shitholes, just like their toxic death cult ideology of Islam. I mean, we saw Islam burning our poppies back in the past. Police did nothing to them, they protected them. Will they feel the same if somebody were to collect a bucket full of these poppies for Palestine and put a match in there? I'm willing to bet the police would come along and arrest them, just like that. Because we all know our police are two-tier, just like Keir The Traitor Starmer is two-tier, and just like our justice system is two-tier, which Kemi Badenoch came out and said that our justice system is fair in relation to Tommy Robinson. No, it's not fair, because how is it fair that a man can be sentenced to prison for contempt of court when I don't recall one other person in modern day society or in the past where they've gone to prison for contempt of court? People have been given fines. 2 people were given suspended sentences for releasing the pictures of James Bulger's killers. Did they serve time? I don't think they did. Tommy Robinson has, though, and he has to spend 9 months in prison. So if you want to talk about justice, talk about the two-tier justice that we have in our system. I wonder if the police will allow people to go out of their way, collect these poppies for Palestine, and trash them. Because that's where they belong, the trash. Because last time I checked, isn't it illegal to be in support of terrorist organisations? Isn't it illegal to basically fund terrorism? Well, that's what Poppies for Palestine would be doing. You'd be funding terrorism. Am I wrong? Am I using too much of that rare resource these days called common sense? Or is it actually the truth? We'll find out. I wonder what Keir The Traitor Starmer will have to say on this. I suspect he will stay true to his words, the only words he'll probably ever fucking stick to, and that he will do everything he can to protect the Muslim community. That's my hunch, the sectarianist bastard. And as I said before, I am not going to sugarcoat a motherfucking thing. I'm not going to mince my words. I'm going to say it exactly how it is and I will do my best not to bullshit you. The way I look at it, these poppies, as I said, they have unequivocally no right to be in our society. Anybody who even has the slightest grain of worth in them will look at these poppies for Palestine and say, that belongs in the trash. I don't want to support terrorism. I would never support terrorist organisations like Hamas or Hezbollah. That's what people worth their salt would say if they were offered to give their support with a poppy for Palestine. I tell you what, if somebody offered me that shit, I'd scrunch it up, throw it in the bin. Just like that. Because I'm not going to support terrorism. Mind you, we'll see Keir the Traitor Starmer at some point again. I suspect he'll be calling for a ceasefire again against Hezbollah and Hamas when Iran has lost more leaders than I'm keeping count of. Which, good, because if Iran wants to support terrorism, then they only have themselves to blame. It's that classic saying, the more you fuck around, the more you're going to find out. And these terrorist scumbags certainly have found out. And it's too bad they'll never be able to learn their lesson from this, because they're all dead. How sad is it that Keir the Traitor Starmer and our establishment are more worried about illegal immigrants and their human rights versus those people where we have over 300,000 people, including veterans, sleeping rough on the streets and could die this winter. Just like the elderly that Keir the Traitor Starmer wants to target and take away their winter fuel payment to make sure that they suffer this winter. No, Keir the Traitor Starmer would rather send our taxpayer money off to fund wars in Ukraine. I'm not afraid to say this shit, because at the end of the day, somebody's got to say it. Somebody has got to call out this establishment. Somebody has to call out the lunacy that's going on in this world. And I am going to be a man of my fucking principles. I am not going to support terrorism. I am not going to support a corrupt establishment. I am not going to support wars in Ukraine or Gaza. And I am not going to support treacherous politicians that put others before its own people. The way I look at it is Keir the Traitor Starmer hasn't just got a rap sheet as long as your arm. He's got a rap sheet as long as the entire nation. I'll admit, I'll have a few wobblies here and there, and I look like a jelly baby while I'm doing it. Anyway, I may have a few wobblies here and there, but you know what? At least I can safely say I stick to my principles. And if I do make a mistake, I can put my hands up and admit my mistakes. Do you think Keir the Traitor Starmer will? Do you think the mainstream media will? Do you think our two-tier police and judiciary will? Like fuck that will they? You'll be lucky if they apologise for putting their shoes on wrong. But that's what I've got for you, folks. All of this shit stinks of corruption, hypocrisy, and absolute vilification of the British people. It is truly saddening that we have a government that will do everything it can to slate the working class, to persecute ordinary British people, while continuing on this wokery path and supporting the WEF shills. Oh, and Keir the Traitor Starmer even went out on a limb to say, we are not leaving the ECHR. He actually went out on a limb and said that. So at this point, it is unequivocal that man will do everything he can to get us back in the EU. He's already surrendered, nearly had a stroke there, call it a half. Anyway, he's already surrendered control of our army to the European Union, the unelected bureaucrats in Brussels. Sorry, I meant bureaucrats. Or maybe I was right first time. The people who do not give a shit about democracy. In fact, they are anti-democratic. They would do everything they can to keep people tied to the EU. Look at the amount of times they had to get, what's-their-face, Ireland, to basically vote and vote and vote. They had to put a re-vote in twice before Ireland finally conceded and said, yes, we accept the Lisbon Treaty. This is the union that Keir the Traitor Starmer wants us connected to, or at least connected to the ECHR. who are more interested in the rights of terrorists and illegal immigrants who have no legal or human right to be here, especially some of these people who go out of their way to run over children, whether deliberately or not, and then make this excuse of, oh, but if I leave, oh, my cat will be unhappy. Tough shit! Don't come over it and commit crimes, you fucking prick. Like, it's not hard. If you want to stay here, you respect the law, you respect our cultures, and you respect our beliefs. If you don't want to respect it, fuck off somewhere else. It's that simple. It's not hard. Why are we making a big song and fucking dance over this? Like, literally, deport the lot of them. Deport these illegals that come over via this route. Put gunboats on the channel. Tell them, turn back the boats or we will sink them. And then sink them, send them straight back to their country of origin. Or bare minimum, back across the French Channel. That's the way you're going to tackle the grooming gangs. No, the people smuggling gangs. That's how you deal with them. Because then, if people realise they're not going to come across, they're not going to pay the people smugglers. And then their business dries up. Just like that. That's how you deal with the people smugglers. But it's down to Keir the Traitor Starmer at this point, and I don't have much hope. The only hope I have right now is that Donald Trump gets into power. Maybe he can sort out this shower of shit in this country, and maybe we can clean ourselves of the corruption that inhabits it.